John, Doug Miles, Don Henderson, WTMY and Sports Talk. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. How are you?
Great. We're on the air, so glad to have you join us. Just mentioning the name of your book, Johnny, You and Me, The Man Behind the Golden Arm, published by our friends at Triumph Books. I had a chance to read through it over the weekend. Don, I know you get a chance, hopefully, to run through it yourself, maybe during the week, but congratulations on the book. It's been a while since I think a really good book has been written about Johnny Unitas.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the accolades. I hope you enjoyed it.
I didn't have a chance to read it. I just came in from New Jersey and did not have a chance to read the book as yet. Look forward to doing so. I'm in a large group of people that think Johnny Unitas was the best ever. I know there are a lot of people that will argue that with Brady playing now and all the rest, but I saw him play a lot of ball games, and I'll tell you, if I wanted somebody to execute the 2-minute drill at the end of a game for me, there's only one guy I'd pick, and that's Johnny Unitas.
Well, thank you, Don. I appreciate that very much. I'm a little biased myself.
I don't blame you.
Well, yeah, it's a good time. I grew up in that era of football, and it was I'm 58 years old now, so that was a good time in my life, and I enjoyed it. And it was all very carefree, and whatever happened, didn't matter. You didn't have the social media attached to it, and it's a little different than it is today, of course.
Well, John, the one thing I'd certainly like to bring out, and that is you talk about not having the social media and all, and that's very, very true. And everybody, of course, still thinks that the game at Yankee Stadium is the turning corner for the National Football League, and it probably was. But I'll tell you, it was a lot of fun in those days. You could, having been from Philadelphia and followed the Eagles all my life, and I'm 80 years old, so I remember those games pretty well, and I'll tell you, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was carefree, Don. I mean, really, when you think about it, you can mosey on anywhere if you wanted to, and everybody, just got involved in that era of sports. It was just, that's what it was, and everybody, if they could get there, they would get there, and hook or crook, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It was fun time.
Hey, John, like I said, I had a chance to read through the book.
Yes,
and,
sir.
And again, I guess your dad is kind of one of those sports figures that a lot of people probably didn't know a lot about, other than the on the field, about the home life, or I guess they knew a little bit about maybe his college years, but you had to kind of dig into the family archives a bit. Was that a challenge for you? Was that difficult?
It's something that I thought was important for people to know. The writing the book was very cathartic for me. I mean, I lost my mom in May of 2002, and of course my father September 11th of 2002. So both my parents passing away, and for years prior, and at that time I was managing my dad, and when that all came to be, I was ended up in litigation for 3.5 years with my father's second wife, which was just crazy and stupid and really wasn't necessary. But to make a long story short, I retained the rights to my father's name and image and brand, and obviously wanted to continue his legacy on as long as I can, and hand it down to my son and daughter as well. But the thing for me was it was just 3.5 years of a labor of love. I wanted people to understand what it was like growing up, and guys, you can relate to this, in the 60s and the 70s, and what you had Vietnam, the hippies and the Beatles and everything else in life, and my goodness, these guys were athletes. That's all they wanted to do was play football. They were little kids, in a big man suit. So, and they were down to earth athletes. I mean, they were just, they'd smoke cigarettes and drink the booze and do all those things, and then, carouse out at night, and 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning, and at 9 o'clock in the morning, they're in the locker room dressing up and going out and kicking some butt, and these are the toughest guys ever. And I grew up with all that, and I saw that, and I thought it was important for people to know. But more importantly, how my father was as a dad. He was a real person. He was just, I'm trying to humanizing him, I think, in the people's eyes. And I enjoyed writing it. There's a lot of things in there that people don't know about my father and my mother and our family. And I think, in reality, I think everybody's family, to a certain degree, can relate to all those things that I've been through. And again, my last name was Unitas. It wasn't Smith, so it was a little different in that regard. But other than that, I think, growing up was just typical. So I try to cover all that in the book, and I hope people get a chance to pick it up and read it and enjoy it, because it's from my heart, and I think they'll have a little better understanding about my dad too.
Well, John, I think he's the quarterback that almost never was.
That's because it was Baltimore, Don. It wasn't New York.
Not only Baltimore, but he had a tough time getting into the National Football League. They didn't want him in the beginning.
No, it was just tough back then. I mean, my goodness, if you look back at some of the quarterbacks and his contemporaries, and Otto Graham and Wyatt Tittle and George Shaw and all those guys, I mean, my goodness. But that's all my father ever wanted to do was be a professional quarterback, and I cover that in this story too.
He really was one of the first, maybe more quarterbacks did it back then, I don't know, but he really controlled the game, called his own plays. I think coaches pretty much let him do what he wanted for the most part. I know you talk about Don Shula didn't quite like that later on with the Colts, but he really much ran the show, didn't he, offensively?
Yeah, I mean, that was my father's job, and during the football season, that's what he worked hard to do. I mean, there were times as a child, every night my father was down in the basement, watching film, and it just had a forward and a reverse button. It didn't have a stop and go. It had a go, but it didn't have a stop. And back and forth with his playbook open in front of him. I mean, and the projected on the the wood paneled wall in front of him. And my sister Janice and I would go down and hang with Dad, if you will, and he'd let us run forward, reverse. We'd be moving it back and forth. Then about 5 minutes, we go, okay, this is enough for us. This is too stupid. We probably move on to some other better thing. But that's just how Dad was. I mean, he was just dedicated. He persevered. He was tough. And again, it's a reflection of that era, Don. I mean, and you guys know. I mean, it's just that time, and it's so different today. I don't, I know my father's feelings about all those things, about football today, but again, that can be captured in the book too. So there's just a lot of stuff that I reflect on in conversations with my father and growing up with him, and he was a strict dad, and my mom was really the kind of the mortar holding it all together, and they were high school sweethearts. So it was a fun time growing up. I enjoyed it. I still miss my parents very, very much, and again, I'm going to continue my best to continue the legacy of my father through our John Unitas Jr. Educational Foundation and what we do there, and so it's just it's kind of neat, I look back and reflect on things like that, and that's what the book was all about, was reflecting back on my life over all this time. So I've been very fortunate and blessed.
Well, John, another interesting factor there is that you talked about Otto Graham a minute ago and some of the other great quarterbacks. Of course, Bobby Lane, he was a temperist, he didn't believe in drinking.
I'm glad you still have a sense of humor.
But I have all the respect in the world. I thought that Paul Brown was one of the greatest coaches of all time, to be honest with you, and I really believed in his system and the way he went about things. The only thing I didn't agree with calling all the plays. And I still don't. Now it's come to the point where nobody calls the plays anymore. Now when you watch baseball, the catchers don't even call the plays, don't even call the pitches anymore. They got to look at the dugout to see what to do. And to me, I thought, in my personal opinion, was it all took away from takes away from the game.
It does. And, the thing is, my father always called his own plays. That's why he studied and did those things and worked after practice with Raymond Berry and Jimmy Orr and Mackey and all the rest of them. And they knew. If Raymond said something to my father, said, John, if this linebacker comes in, this is what we're going to do. And he only had to say it one time. And in the '58 championship game, which I reflect on as well in the book, is that's exactly what happened. I think it was Sam Huff slid in or something, and Raymond did a thing that my father and them talked about, about a month before or whatever, and boom, my father hit Raymond right on the square between the 8 and the 2, and it went for a long time. So yeah, it was important to those guys, and all of them knew that. I mean, there were times when Shula would send a play into the huddle, and Raymond was in there, and the play would come in, and whoever sent the play would say, this is the play, and it was for Raymond. And Raymond said, John, he says, I'm not going to run that play. And Raymond said, and my father says, why? He says, well, we haven't practiced it, we didn't work it, and bum, bum, bum. He says, okay, fine, Raymond, I'll call something else. And that's how they worked it. I mean, it wasn't, there's no headphones, that's how they did it. That's exactly how they did it back then.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I had heard that story many, many times, but I had heard that Raymond and he had worked on this during an exhibition game once, and that it carried all the way through from the exhibition game to the regular season. And as you said, when Huff made the move,
yep,
Barry made the move, and it was something they hadn't practiced or really hadn't discussed since that.
That's right.
I always understood it was a preseason game, but you're more accurate than I am.
Yeah, it was prior to the '58 game during that season, Don. So it was and again, there's Raymond serves on my board. Raymond is like my second father, and Raymond and Sally and their children, and Raymond serves on my board of the foundation and comes each year, and it's just so nice to see him and talk to him about it. And for the book, we've interviewed over 100 people, folks. Even my aunt, my father's oldest sister, Millie's never been interviewed in her life before. So there's a lot of this. I mean, it's the truth, and it's just so neat to listen to the reflections of other folks about my father, and even the stories I hear. I heard a story the other day. A friend of mine is Mel Kiper with ESPN, and so Mel. So I'm over Mel's house, and he went to the same high school we do, and we're kind of boosters for the football program. And some band showed up and said, John, he says, he's a Calvert Hall graduate. He's older than I am, and he says, I helped coach lacrosse, for St. Paul's, where your other brothers played, and your father was at one of the games, and they scored this goal, and there happened to be, they had this little cannon that shot off. And they score this goal, and my father happened to be standing by the cannon, and the cannon shot off. My father jumped about 10 feet up high in the air and everything. And Mike saw him. He said, "Jesus, John, I'm so sorry." He says, "Jesus, Mike, I thought I was just ready to see who the hell shot me."
He better not ever go to West Virginia because they shoot that thing off.
Yeah, I know. So that's the kind of sense of humor my dad had with all these people. He says, "Oh, my goodness." But again, it's just like that's how Dad was. That's how that era of player was. It is just so pure, and it's just so fresh, and it's just so natural, and it's just you don't have all the attachments or accoutrements that are attached to these players today, and there's no one loyal to the city they play in. It was just such a different era, and when they start comparing my father's records and the Drew Brees and all that stuff, it doesn't even compare. It's just different. You can't compare.
Well, the interesting thing is that I don't know whether you were around the Eagles at all at that time, but the Eagles, their practice was on the intramural field at the University of Pennsylvania. I mean,
That's right.
It was like a ditch that you dug out.
Yeah. Last time I was there, my son played. He was playing for Villanova when he was in college, and we went to a University of Penn game right there in the field. And what brought back so much memories? I mean, that thing is nostalgic. I mean, it hasn't changed a lick.
It was a great. I'll tell you, Franklin Field was a great place to play, and
that's where Rosenbluth played.
Yeah, that championship game will go down all time, and
that's
Chuck Bednarik, I tell you, I saw him at the Old Timers, and he struggled a little bit, but what a great guy.
Oh yeah, man! It's just those old guys are great, man. I've had growing up with my dad and being part of him, managing him later in his life, and going to these card shows and events and things of that nature. Just so much fun. Nothing can compare to it.
Talking with John Unitas Jr., author of Johnny, You and Me, the man behind the Golden Arm. You mentioned the '58 championship game, which really, I guess, kind of put football on the map with the national TV and the overtime game. Your dad played in that, of course, and he also played another famous game that maybe he doesn't like to talk about much, but the Super Bowl III. So he played in two of the iconic football games of all time.
Yes, sir. There are a lot of them in between and before and after as well, but that certainly was a sore spot for my dad. He doesn't like to lose.
You talk a lot about Joe Namath, though, in the book, because they grew up not too far apart in that part of the country there, Pennsylvania, western Pennsylvania and all that. But were they friends?
I think later in life, maybe, Doug. I know we went to a couple card shows, and Joe was there, and Dad and Joe, talked the night away. So they're a little difference in age, I think, too. But it didn't matter. Dad get along with everybody, even if it was a 2-year-old. But anyhow, it's just one of those things. Joe and Dad, and I think Joe, sometimes respects my father and for what he represented to the NFC at that time, and it was a changeover in the entire National Football League.
Right.
Is what gave AFC the identity.
I'd like to have you sort of talk a little bit about it too, and that is that Baltimore really was the hub for such a long time of football. I mean, whether it was Giants and Eagles and Baltimore, Baltimore is the hub. And a lot of people don't understand, and even I, to a degree, don't understand, how could a city as great as Baltimore, with all the players and all the representation they had, lose football? Anything can change. It's amazing. People don't believe.
Right.
Even the National Football, it can change. People don't understand. It's a cycle. But and then when it came back, it was even more popular than it was when your dad played.
Yeah, it's what the sports represents today. I mean, it's just that if it wasn't for my dad and Otto and Benaric and the rest of them out there, I mean, you wouldn't have what you have today. The product wouldn't be what it is, and that's the beauty of it. But here's one of the things that's always rubbed me the most about the NFL. Is that, they talk about the concussions and all that stuff. Well, it's part of the game, no question about it, and I'm sure there's a lot of, I'm not going to get into that. But more importantly for me is that why don't you treat your guys that made your league what it is today just as good as you treat the current players that you're paying that are on their payrolls?
Correct.
It's, in other words, like my father was a real advocate for helping these guys that are destitute and can't get around and doing those things. And my father was fortunate enough. He had his operation, had his issues, that sort of thing, and he was in okay health, but he just loved to eat the bad foods. But anyhow, that's another story. What I'm saying is, take
Chuck Bednaric's been on that blast for 25 years. And,
some people can do that. It's like some people can smoke cigarettes forever and not have a problem, But what I'm saying, I'm just saying, NFL, take care of your old guys.
They won't
just take care of them.
It's amazing, but they won't do it. It's
I know
hard
they
to
don't.
believe, and they've made all kinds of committees, and they've had all kinds of meetings, and they just refuse to go back any further than they are now.
It really is. It's frustrating. Again, I'm not. You can't fix it, but it's a big elephant out there.
Yep.
But it is what it is. But anyway, no. But the football back then is cool. It's nice to see the evolution of the game. Obviously, I think there's some issues now today that they're all going to regret. But other than that, it is what it is. It's a wonderful game. I follow college football quite a bit, and it's nice to see these young kids coming up. And I don't like to see the crazy crap that's happening in the college football with these guys doing the stupid things that they're doing. It just doesn't make any sense. It just, it needs to be more disciplined, I think, in these college football programs, and I don't think it is. They just want the best player, the best game, and they want to win. But there's other consequences to life. There is life after football.
No question about that.
Yeah, talking about that, John, and you write about it in the book about your dad after retirement. Now, you said he did okay, but he still had to do some work in the off season, right? It wasn't the big money obviously back then, so he had to get other kind of jobs, didn't he? Even after retirement.
Sir. No, sir, absolutely. He worked as a pile driver at Bethlehem Steel when he was here in Baltimore. Then had some outside sales representative jobs, cardboard boxes. Printed circuit boards, things of that nature, and he enjoyed that. He enjoyed visiting with the folks and the people out there. And my dad was down to earth. He really was. If you met him, you wouldn't forget him. That's kind of the mantra. It's just like he just was so. It didn't matter who you were, and he wasn't above himself to say, how are you? And he always remembered your first name. That's one of my father's attributes.
How about that?
Yeah, and it's just even if he didn't see you for a while, he'd remember your first name. But Dad loved the people. He recognized that if it wasn't for the folks and the people that supported the Baltimore Colts back then and came to the Colt Corral meetings and came to the barbecues and everything else and asked for his autograph, and my father never refused an autograph. His success wouldn't have been. That's period. End of subject.
Well, Doug and I are very fortunate because Otto Graham lived, Doug, I'd say, the last 25 years of his life right here in Sarasota.
Right.
Well, we went to Otto's golf tournament 3 years in a row before Otto passed away. Dad, myself, and a couple of business associates, we came down to Florida and played in his golf tournament. It was wonderful. It was great getting Dad back in touch with. And I got a matter of fact, I got a letter from Otto here in my house, from Otto, saying how nice it was to see Dad at the tournament.
That's great.
And his son is up in Rhode Island or New Hampshire, And I keep in touch with him as well. So, yeah, Graham's a
Don't
wonderful.
Don't know him at all, but Otto was here for such a long time, and what a great addition to the community. And as you said, went out of his way to do exactly what your dad did. He
was the epitome. They're both the same. They come from the same mold.
Yep.
It's the truth, and it's wonderful to see that. And there are a few athletes, far and few between, but there are a few that we still see doing that in life. But I'd like to see more of it because the kids, the younger folks, the kids that are growing up with all this, they need that, And I just don't see there's enough of that being done. Obviously you watch the news, you see it all today, I don't know what.
Well, as I said, as Doug said, I haven't had a chance. I just got back into Sarasota at 6:00 tonight. But I'll see Doug this weekend, and I'll get the book. I really look forward to it, and it's nice to see a young man who really appreciates his mom and dad, and try to put this kind of effort and energy into showing what the family life of a great football player is all about.
Thank you, Don. I really appreciate those comments.
Just want to mention the book one more time, Johnny, You and Me, the man behind the Golden Arm, Triumph Books, our friends over there, a great publishing house, put that out. And, John, real pleasure to have you on with us. I guess you can get the book anywhere, all the websites, and triumphbooks.com, but good luck with it. I know a lot of the football fans that may not have grown up with Johnny You are going to enjoy reading about it.
Well, thank you, Doug, very much. Yeah, you can get it at Amazon.com and all the Barnes & Noble's bookstores. And if you go to my website, JohnnyUnitas.com, and click on the collectibles section, you can click right directly to Triumph and order from them directly as well. So thank you very, very, very much for having me on, and God bless everybody.
John, thank you for spending some time with us. Look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, sir. Me too. Thank you. Bye-bye.